Welcome everyone to the Local Foods College. This is a session that we normally host in the early winter time with experts from around the states. This time around we are hosting this rapid response to address your questions and bring in additional experts from around the state to really help answer questions and be your access points during this very unusual time for all of us. And with that, I want to just briefly say that, again, Local Foods College is coming to you from the Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships. We're a program housed under Extension that is focused on connecting Greater Minnesota with the expertise and education and experts from around the state. Traditionally, our Local Foods College platform has been used to educate growers of all sizes, consumers, anyone interested in a range of subjects from hazelnuts to grazing to deep winter greenhouses. In the response to the COVID disruptions that we were seeing, we saw this platform as an opportunity to really provide you all with some access points to experts. We encourage you to put your questions in the chat box and allow this to be a dialogue between the people that we are bringing to this presentation and you, who have real concerns and needs in your communities, on your farms, in your businesses. And so with that, I am very pleased to introduce to you our experts today. It's Karly and Jamie and Helen. Karly and Jamie, I'll have their bios in the next couple slides, but Karly and Jamie are coming from the Minnesota Grocers Association. And as you can read, they're the only state trade association that represents the food industry of Minnesota from farm to fork. They have quite an expansive reach, working with retail and wholesale, and 1,300 locations statewide. They represent the common interests of those engaged in all aspects of the food industry, and we're really pleased to have them as experts on this session. Jamie is coming to us as the president of the MGA, and she fosters relationships, articulates industry relevancy, and provides an external voice to the food industry. She sits on a variety of committees and boards and task force, and she raises awareness to the wide variety of issues facing the food industry. She serves in the governor-appointed positions of the Food Safety Task Force and Good Food Access Advisory Committee. Karly Ackerman is the membership communications manager for the MGA, and she works with membership to provide engagement opportunities and increase the awareness of food industry in Minnesota. She manages relationships within agricultural space, promoting relationships, and the Minnesota Grown program. Helen, who will be presenting after Jamie and Karly, is part of MDA. She joined at the end of 2019, and I would imagine a number of you have had intersection with Helen over the last few months. She's been very active in the farm to school work and working with supporting producers and their communities around wholesale markets. Before returning to her home state of Minnesota, she worked in community food systems in Lawrence, Kansas, with the Lawrence Douglas County Sustainability Office. And she helped found the Sitka Salmon Shares, a community-supported fishery business, and earned her Master's of Regional Planning at Cornell University. And I should say, I didn't introduce myself, but I'm Connie Carlson. I am the co-director of this statewide food systems and sustainable agriculture department with the Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships. And with that, I am going to hand this over to Jamie and Karly. So here you are.
Master AV. Oh, there we go. Hopefully, I think we just unmuted ourselves. So hopefully you can hear us okay. If we can get a thumbs up, or if Connie, you can let us know that you can hear us.
Yes, we can hear you, and I'm seeing your screen come up right now.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, Connie, thank you so much for the opportunity today. Thank you for everyone that's joined into this conversation. To echo your thoughts, we're going to go through a lot of information. We're going to tell you about who we are, what we do for industries, some of the things. We're going to get into COVID a little bit about what's been happening in our industry, and then how that relates to what we're doing collaboratively. And then we obviously would love to open it up for questions. We touch a lot of different points, and are happy to walk through any questions anyone has, and hopefully we can all come out a little smarter after this as well. So so again, Connie, you did a great job introducing us. I'm Jamie Pfuhl, president of the Minnesota Grocers Association. I've been here at the association for a little bit over, I'm in my 24th year. I've been serving in the leadership position over 14 years now. So long time around the industry. And I'm joined here by Karly.
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name is Karly Ackerman. I am the membership and communications manager here at the Minnesota Grocers Association. You will notice Jamie and I do not have video on. We are still working in the office, but just to continue our social distancing, we're sitting across a large table with a computer in front of us. So bear with us on that.
All right. So Connie also shared with you who we are. We are the Minnesota Grocers Association, the only state association that represents the food industry really from farm to fork. We've been around for actually over 120 years. That's a legacy that we're really proud of. We're one of the first trade associations actually in the state. We have 300 retail members, manufacturer and wholesale partners, distribution. We have over 1,300 locations statewide that we support. Our member companies employ about 150,000 union and non-union Minnesotans. The objective of the association is to be the civic leader for the food industry in the state of Minnesota. We ask our members to organize, educate, and shape policy for the common good of the state, being mindful of not just industry priorities. Again, we're looking to advance common interests of all of those in any aspect of the food industry. We all have such a critical role to play, which I think is all the more prevalent when we're in a crisis as we are today. And we are the leadership resource for the state of Minnesota. Everything that we do has to be tasked into one of our objective buckets. So the big objectives for our association obviously govern for the civic advancement of the food industry. We want to foster a fair marketplace through a civic approach, be the relevant voice for industry, and support an active and engaged membership. So as a trade association, one of the questions, why do members join associations? So these are the national reasons. This is kind of from folks that have answered a survey through the Association of Associations, why people join. They think it's their civic responsibility. They want to be a part of the government affairs and advocacy, make sure that they're reaping the benefits of that. Information resource, networking opportunities, a validation by being a part of it, and then there's always that good old "who asked me to join" gets folks in the door. So our membership we touched on consists of, Karly?
Yep, absolutely. So Jamie touched on our memberships. We do have around 1,300 locations all across the state, ranging from retailers, the manufacturers, the distributors, wholesalers, and then anyone who supports the industry in any way are members of ours. And again, it's large and small, chain, independent, all across the state of Minnesota.
We've got convenience partners as well in there. So a lot of different folks. One other thing I want to touch on, I think when we have these conversations, I think it's always helpful to understand a little bit about industry and some of the trends and things that we see. Now, I'm going to tell you that all of these trends and things that we're talking about are pre-COVID. So I don't know, everything is changing so dramatically every day, but certainly the things that we were seeing is the shifts in industry formats, the grocerant category, where you're seeing grocery stores bring more and more of the home cooked meal, the replacement meal. Again, a lot of these things are changing and evolving, and we don't know where we're going to end up on the other side of this crisis, but this was a trend that was happening. Convenience still front and center. Mergers and acquisitions is something that's happening. There's a lot of competition and certainly workforce pressures out there. Our average square foot store in the grocery sector is about 41,000 square feet. Net profit is 1.2%, very low profit margins. I think one of the lowest of all industries out there. And then we just talk a little bit about the property tax bill. So food trends that we're seeing, there's a lot of things going on with labeling, social responsibility. We're seeing meal kits, we're seeing innovations, we're seeing plant-based. I think these food trends are one of the things that's really exciting for us to talk about and share conversation on today, is how do we maximize partnerships from farm to fork with some of these trends that are happening now. We do have about 5.2% of disposable income was food at home. I think that's obviously that's going to change dramatically. Weekly household grocery expense, about $113,000 a week. And then an average store carries about 30,000 products. Again, we're just setting the stage of kind of what we look like as a general rule. Shopper trends, online access were very important. Consumer expectations are expanding, what they look for when they go in the store, much more experiential, wanting to really be a part of what's going on. Delivery service is possible, click and collect, picking up at the door. Health and well-being always continues to be front and center. The number of customers that come through an average grocery store, about 11,000. It's about $35 sales per customer transaction. I know that everyone out there is saying, wow, that seems really low, but I guess when we average it all out, that's what the average transaction is. They are expecting, and again, all of this is evolving, about $100 billion to be online grocery spending by 2022. So again, I think that's an important part of the conversation when you think that people are moving to online more and more, but yet they want experiences and they have this experiential quality that they want when they go in the store. So I think those are interesting things, again, as part of our dialogue as we move through today. So what do we do at the trade association? Part of what we do is obviously telling industry story. We talk about our consumers, we talk about the careers that we provide, and certainly the integral part that we are in the communities that we serve. As Connie shared with you, we are involved in a tremendous amount of organizations, representations. We sit on a lot of different task force, making sure that, again, industry's voice is heard and that we can work together. And it's exciting because that's where we find a lot of unique and really great opportunities, not only to advance industry, but to advance those around us. We also are the only state trade association representing folks up at the legislature. So that's a big part of what we do as well. Just a couple other side notes about some of the commitments and passions that we have here at the association. We have a foundation, so we do scholarship awards, we have grants. We just received a large grant from DEED for continuing education to promote careers and advance folks within our industry. Again, we have a lot of different jobs and a lot of careers sometimes people don't think about. So that's a piece of what we have. Carly, I'll let you take it from here.
Absolutely. So one of the big things at the association is we do have a lot of communications and publications going out. And this is all informational to our members. At a lot of people use this as the only connection they have with the food industry. So we have a quarterly magazine that goes out. It goes through industry trends we're seeing at the time and does a good local showcase of different retailers and manufacturers in the state. We do have on the bottom here the Frontline newsletter. That is what we like to call it our bathroom read, where there's little snippets of things that are going on in the state and in our industry, and that goes out monthly. Anything that we do on a more timely matter in between these, we're always on our social media and in our website. So obviously with the COVID crisis, we've been very active online. So check us out there. And again, this is all our information that we do for our members. Another way we help communicate to our members is with regulatory guides. This helps our members stay in compliance with assistance in that, and then gives them that regulatory support as the association for the state. One of the big aspects we do at the association, and just in the whole food industry of Minnesota is our hunger campaign. So we've been doing this hunger campaign since 2008. We've raised over 38 million meals. This program, we call it the Bag Hunger Campaign. We get partners together with our vendors and our retailers. Some stores do great displays, and winners of the awards, the money goes back to the community, to those food banks. And as you can see here, we have our past 2 years all across the state. So you can see all that money is going all across the state, helping where it's needed in those communities. And this gets me to another program we've been doing. Jamie mentioned that we're always have different partnerships and sit on different boards. And one of the main things I do in my position here at the MGA is work with the Department of Ag and the Minnesota Grown. We have what we call is the Minnesota Grown Retailer of the Year program. This has been a program where we get local products with local farmers, local producers, work with our retailers, create really creative displays, and get that awareness to the consumer in store. So what we do, as you see on the screen here, we have different regions of the state, and that's where we divide our Retailer of the Year award. This started in 2016, before we had a single and a multi-point store. And then we figured we want to really get every corner of the state represented in this program. So you can see these are last year's winners with their displays, colorful, all types of product. Helen and I are actually working right now to go over the submissions for this year. So those should be coming out depending on how COVID gets us going, but those should be coming out this summer. So we'll have new Retailer of the Year award winners. Another partnership that we do, we love to expand our partnerships, and we really at the MGA have an ongoing working relationship to support local farmers, local producers in the state. So we've been working with Renewing the Countryside and Feast, have attended the local foods marketplace in the past to try to get our awareness to those local producers in the state aware of how we can partner together to get into the retail.
I think one of the things that's so important about these last few things that Karly spoke about, and that I think again is really relevant to our conversation today, is that figuring out one of the things that's really critical is that success of brick and mortar, because the brick and mortar does bring so much more to the community. It's the jobs, honestly, it's the taxpayer base, it's giving back to the community. We're a lot of that first time job. A lot of seniors have those, the jobs to get out of the house and come have some social interaction. And there's a lot of value that comes from having that brick and mortar grocer, whether it's a very small independent or a convenience style store, all the way to a little bit larger traditional grocer. That brings a lot of value. One of the things that I think is so important about these partnerships with whether it be Minnesota Grown or Feast or what we're working on here is that local connection really brings into that experience, brings into what the next generation is also looking for, knowing where that food is coming from. And I think as we're going to get into the COVID-19 crisis, all of these things are just going to become all the more important, and how we can expand on these things. And when we come out on the other side of this crisis, how we can build a stronger support system for both farm and retail, I think is really going to be critical and important to get Minnesota back on its feet. So I think all of these are components that we've been working on over the years to get there. We see some great creative ways where retailers embrace their local farmers, but there's certainly work to be done there. And I shouldn't say it's just farmers too, because it's all kinds of local producers, whether it's cheese or honeys or whatever that may be. Mm-hmm. So that's just, I think, an important part of all of our futures. So with that, I'm going to take us to the COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously, everyone is very well aware of everything that's going on. It's hard to believe when you look at this brief timeline that we were talking about today, and when the governor speaks, that really only been since March 13th. We're on the 1 month. It feels like probably for some of us, it's been almost feels like a year. I mean, this has been a lot going on all in a short amount of time. So we end up in the peacetime emergency. Schools are closed, bars and restaurants close. We have motor carriers and drivers. There's things that affect what's going on there. We've got price gouging that's coming up and price and all kinds of fluctuations in the marketplace. Governor puts our stay-at-home order in and extends that even further out until April 8th. And so what happens while this is going on to the industry? Immediate challenges when this happens are the consumer reaction, front and center. Everybody gets scared, which is understandable, right? And the food and our shelves certainly show that happens. Food service has dramatic shifts. If you were a farm, a producer, a manufacturer whose source was going to cafeterias, to restaurants, to stadiums, if somehow you were supporting food service, your entire business has changed and you've got to move with that. Disruptions in the food supply chain. One of the things that for those of us that are in the food industry, you understand how it works. You understand that right now we're thinking about Christmas candy and we're not buying Easter product in real time. We're 6 months, a year ahead in our planning. Everything we buy and sell goes really on a history of what that product is. I like to use toilet paper as the example because everyone says, what the heck happened there? But that's one of the most consistent items that's in the store, right? People are very consistent on their use and their purchases. And so everything in the supply chain is based on that. And all of a sudden you have this glut, this hoarding that happens because people are nervous and then they start seeing their neighbors do it. It's an instinct, right? Then you see a bare shelf and your instinct kicks even more. Boy, I better get some so that doesn't happen to me. We're very used to having anything and everything we want in a minute, or if we can't find it here, we go to the next store. So this disruption created so much chaos in the food chain. The other thing you think about when there's a natural disaster of any sort, say we have a hurricane or a tornado or something dramatic happens, it's usually localized. It's in a particular region. They may have the crisis happening, but other parts of the nation can help out and they can work the supply chain to help that. Well, this is the first time I think that any of us can remember in our histories of a nationwide disruption. The disruption is the same whether you're in the East Coast, West Coast, or Midwest. So the recovery of that is very, very taxing, right? And then how government reacts. Government reacts by saying, oh my goodness, what else can we be doing to protect people? And so then executive orders and regulations and changes and recommendations are coming in, and we have to react in an immediacy. And so then there's just kind of the rollout of what that looks out. So very, very chaotic in the beginning. What do we do as industry? So immediately, obviously, we work to be that resource for our membership because they're just trying to figure out how to keep the stores open. We immediately start working on signage, working with the government regulations from, again, if people say, what could the industry care about? There's not a commissioner that we aren't talking to almost daily, because between labor and economic development, agriculture, health, human services, SNAP, WIC, all of those we administer. There's a ton of things that happen through that retail end of the grocery chain. So the food supply chain, so dramatic. We immediately start pushing information out through the airwaves to try to get the media helping customers know what to do, helping to try to bring some stability back to the food shelves or the shelves in your grocery store. So one of the things that comes of this, obviously, is we're seeing the disruption in the restaurant and the food service market, and the challenges that now farmers are having potentially getting some of this food to market. How can we help? So we immediately start working on our responses, right? We immediately start working with using our agency collaborations, using our great relationship with the Department of Ag. How can we help get some of this farm to retail happening in real time and try to mitigate this. So we go out to the media. Karly will walk us through what this looks like, where we've been going with it. But we also were able to use our voice with the media to share and expand, to make sure people are, when they see some of these unique products, maybe wrapped a little different in the store, that we're able to try to actually lift and get people trying different things. So we were able to use all of those things in kind of this immediacy of a response.
Absolutely. So when we went in for the industry response, we wanted to figure out how we can help that demand in the Minnesota food industry, what we can do to help. So this was our initial ask that we had to our suppliers to help with the retail, making sure that there's liability insurance, that they have the appropriate licensing, how much product is actually available, and is this going to be a one-time sale, or is they're hoping to do this ongoing? What is their product in? Is it packaged? Is it loose? Is it in certain types of bundles? How is that going to look going to the retailer? And is it going to be ready? Do you have to do anything special that you weren't necessarily doing prior with your first market to get it into a retailer? And then what is your capacity for transportation? Is it just right around your farm or home, or can you get it all across the state and Midwest? So those were the questions that we were asking to help with this initial ask out.
To bridge the retailer to the farm, or to the producer, as it was, right?
Yep, absolutely. And so what we did with our partnership that we already have with the Minnesota Department of Ag is we had a call and reached out and figured we can help out the local farmers and producers with an easy to use survey. So what we have is this immediate wholesale market need survey that has been open, and it's open now, and it's continuing to stay open. And this is to help those producers and those farmers who markets were lost due to the closures of the schools, restaurants, bars, colleges. And this will give all their information in a one-stop spreadsheet for us, so we can help get those buyers and those retailers their information as soon as possible to help with those supply chain issues we've been having.
And I think one of the things, as we started these conversations, I think especially for those of you that have been, from the farm and producer side, you certainly understand there's been, through the course of time, probably challenges in trying to get to retail. And I think that's one of the things that I'm so proud of, the work that we did with the Department of Ag, is that we really kind of put all of that aside and tried to figure out how we could answer this in the immediate. Looking at what's happening right now. Obviously, even as we're speaking, the markets are evolving. Spring is coming. Things are going to be changing as we move forward. Farmers markets are able to be open. We're able to have our nurseries open. Things are evolving even as we speak. But in the beginning, it took some kind of, I think, some discipline on all of our parts to say, how do we just really look at this as an immediate problem and solution, though we understand we have long-term goals and objectives as well.
Yeah, Karly and Jamie, a couple questions coming through here from folks.
Yep.
And I think this might be a good time to just dive a hair bit deeper into some of those supplier questions, if possible. There's some questions around how pricing was managed with those questions. And then I'm very curious about whether or not you can answer anything about some flexibility. So, and maybe you'll highlight this with some real world examples, but be very interested to hear how flexible some retailers were around that packaging or bringing it to market. If they just wanted carrots and they found someone who could get them carrots, were they willing to take those carrots? So if you have any insight into that, that would be great. Otherwise, maybe you'll highlight it.
Yep. No. Well, and absolutely. We'll just click to the next one, and we'll kind of talk about that as we go. So
good.
So to date, we've had 35 producers respond, and this is the food products that we got back from that, or that were in that group. What we do know is that we have had now, what I will say, and Carly can speak to this too, is a little bit of the disappointment right now for us is that we don't necessarily have the stories to tell, because we are so pressed on the retail side that for them to kind of even reach back and talk us through what happened has been a little challenging. That being said, we know for a fact that some of some of the meat products did get out, and they got out into a very small market, and there was a relationship that started with a pork that turned into a beef that worked really well, and we know that that's going to continue to be ongoing. I know from my personal experience, we have been out in the stores kind of looking to see if we're able to see these products coming through, knowing how we tried to help place them. I have personally seen the products out in the store because we've seen unique shifts in the microgreens coming through the store. Those were packaged and prepped and ready to go to market. And the pricing and everything was run consistent with other maybe current Minnesota relationships that they had. So those microgreens were consistent. I have seen bulk mushrooms. I have seen the carrots come in. I've seen the carrots come in the black trays with shrink wrapped around them. So I don't know for a fact if that was something the grocer did, or I would assume it came from the grocer from the looks of the wrappings. So those were some areas that we've seen success come through. You know, I know we have had some reach out from bakeries that baked bread specifically for restaurants. And we were not able to place those because by the time, even within a very short amount of time, the grocers themselves had they're doing their own baking, or they already had relationships and there wasn't really any space for added bread. So some of it, I mean, it's not perfect, right? And so that was an area but I know that baker found a new home, but that wasn't it. But I think one of the challenges is the pricing, but what I will also say is in this particular time, the pricing is a little bit by the wayside in that it is about getting the product on the shelves. And I think what we're seeing is a little more openness to be able to bring that forward. Now, that experience and how we would stock things, maybe trying to be more experiential, is a little bit by the wayside, and now it's more need-based, I would say. And that's just a shift in with this crisis. But we have seen it happen, and we've seen it work. I know that we'll have more anecdotals once things start to taper back a little bit, but there is so much going on at the retail space to try to keep this moving that it's a little bit of a challenge. So that's kind of where we're at. I think the opportunities and what's exciting from where we sit is that this worked, and I think figuring out how to grow on this, no pun intended, right? How to expand on these successes are what's really going to be important. And I don't know, we can kind of walk through the questions as well.
Yeah, a good one coming through here about, are there ways that you see to simplify for the suppliers to make it easier for retailers? Any recommendations there to expedite that flow?
With
you know what I mean?
Oh, whoops. We can leave it here. With that, I know our retailers are wanting information up front right away. So I know the survey asked the questions we need to make sure there's that liability insurance. Is there a way to get it to the store? I know transportation has been an issue. So if those producers or farmers are able to get it to the retailer, that's retail ready. I know that is very obviously during this time with everyone spread so thin, that is very helpful and would expedite this your product going into the retailer more quickly than not, for sure.
Right.
And what we're doing, like right now for us, we're communicating daily with the membership. We're also in multiple fashions. We do conference calls as well as then daily information going out. So I think the survey and getting the questions, knowing that it's retail ready, I think that's one of the things that always, there seems to be a little bit of a barrier. And then what is the quantity that you're able to provide so that we can, we can know if it's ongoing, know that we can put it on the shelves and it can be a sustainable thing. I think that's one of the other things. And I think the other thing right now to help open these doors is if there are immediate needs, making sure that we're aware of that so that we can try and again push that out. Because we've had some really good luck too with maybe a more regional, that there's a intimate partnership that can be made with maybe a one point store that just works really well for somebody in that area, that maybe lost a traditional, like, oh, our products used to go to the restaurant, but now you can get that product in the, we tried to do that with some cheese and some other things that now you can get that in the grocery store. And again, then hopefully when that restaurant comes back, maybe there's a way to continue both veins of that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Any thoughts about or what you're hearing about the role for distributors in this work and how to keep them in that supply chain?
Oh, I think, if folks are working through a distributor, I think that makes it probably a little bit easier in a sense. And I know even our wholesale, like our produce distributors have said, man, get us anyone and we'll do anything we can. So I think if you have that distribution relationship, I think that should certainly help. I think kind of some of the things we're seeing are folks that maybe didn't have that distribution relationship. Right. And I think what if anything we're all going to learn, and I will say, our 100% objective in looking at this is that there are certainly horrendous gaps in supply chain, and there are things, this, I think on the other side of this pandemic, nothing will ever be the same again as far as how even food supply works. There's going to be things that are addressed and changed. I think the acknowledgement of what the farm community means to America, to Minnesota, right? And how to bring that front and center again. I think all of this is going to play out in a positive way in the long run, but it's a very bumpy road to get there. That's an unfortunate part, right?
Yeah. 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 Another question, that supply exists here in the producer community. How can MGA encourage retailers to take real meetings with producers and do some planning to get local items on the produce rack every day?
And that's something we've been working on, and I think one of the things that we need to do, and maybe and it's working, I think, with the Minnesota Grown, with everyone, is figuring out. One of our objectives has been, and we've tried to do this in conjunction with the Minnesota Grown when we present our awards, is to try to figure out a time to bring the communities together in a meaningful way, right? And if it's something that we can facilitate in a networking opportunity to get those folks the chance to talk to each other, I think that's important. But what I do know, and this is one of the things we ran into a little bit with Feast, is that if we're getting those meetings, we have to know that we can get enough product that we're picking the right retailers that have the space for the amount of product that's available, right? Because it's great to have a meeting, but if it's a one-off opportunity and it can't be an ongoing supply, that's hard for some of our larger grocers, right? But right. The more intimate, that's a different conversation too. So I think trying to marry those in a meaningful way is what's going to help move this forward, so that people don't get frustrated on either side, right? Oh, we keep talking to these people, but they can't fulfill what we need, or gosh, I go and I give my best pitch and they just don't seem interested, right? So, so how do we get the A's with the A's and the B's with the B's, so that it makes sense for everybody's time and effort.
Right. Do you see some value in Minnesota made, especially right now? Is this a special time for that do customers resonate with any of that, or do you see any changes in that Minnesota made right now?
Well, I will tell you, we have been working on making that relevant because we think it's important with the farmers, right? And so when we're doing, we've had a lot of opportunities to discuss with the media things that are happening. We encouraged folks, if you saw different packaging in your store, make sure you tried those because those are coming from your local farmer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that same thing is resonating as much as maybe before COVID, but I think before COVID, the buyer that was buying Minnesota made was a buyer that was committed to Minnesota made. What I think now the opportunity that we have families shopping and eating every meal at home 7 days a week, 3 meals a day. And so we have a window of time to introduce them to things they may not have, right? So I think they may not be resonating, but when we introduce them, and that's one of the things we're even working on with our retail folks, is if you're doing these partnerships, by golly, put signs up and let people know. If you're a producer that ends up in your grocery store, use this time because you've got an audience that maybe was only doing online before. You have an audience that maybe ate out seven days a week and only bought milk at the grocery store, right? All of a sudden now they're going through the produce department. We know that canned fruits and vegetables and frozen fruits and vegetables are actually at a premium right now, and they're running low. So people are buying more fresh fruits and vegetables because of that. So though the Minnesota made, how it's resonating may be different, I think we have a whole new audience that we have a beautiful opportunity to engage in. It's just, we had to figure out how to do that. And I think as the longer this pandemic goes on, the more and more people go to grocery stores. One of the things we're talking about as an industry now is how do we get back to creating that experience? Yeah. Instead, people are frustrated. We're telling them all the things they can't do. How do we make them feel good and excited about what they can do, right? And so if that makes any sense, Connie, about kind of how we see that.
Yeah, well, and I think that ties right into a question we had about that I've seen come through here around store demos. So what's the future of store demos?
Boy, I will tell you honestly, I think store demos are going to have a long road to go, and that is incredibly unfortunate because I know that's how so many great Minnesota made products got out. Because sometimes I know the price point isn't as aggressive as some, and there's a multitude of reasons, and we understand that, but I think that sampling and that personal touch is what really does help. But here's what I say, right? So we have the opportunity of invention right now too. We're not going to get that. People can't be having that face-to-face. You don't want someone there sampling just because of social distancing and all kinds of things. But how can we think about those experiences and still create that as we move forward? Right now our delis are shut down or in pre-packaged. The salad bars are down, bulk food is down, everything is being pre-packaged. The whole way we go to market is changing. And I don't know how fast some of that's going to come back, because I don't know how long the fear is going to hold on to us, quite frankly. But again, I challenge all of us, because I challenge our members every day. You've got to start delighting people, because we're so frustrated in this situation. We know we're doing what we need to do, but it's not what we're used to at all, right?
Right.
So those aren't great answers. I know that's not a great answer. I'd love to say we could be sampling again really soon, but I don't know.
Right. We keep having some questions through here, but we do have a little bit of, I think we should devote a little time to Helen and some of that survey response work that she has on deck. So
for sure,
let's move over and provide some time for Helen, and then we should have about 30 minutes for additional questions. The dialogue in the chat room has been very thoughtful, and I'm hopeful that we're able to continue to connect with that input that we're getting from people. So let's hand it over to Helen and then see where we go.
Beautiful.
Thanks, Connie, and thanks, Jamie and Carly. This has been really great dialogue, and I was happy to just sit back and listen
I know.
and have so many great ideas come forward. So I'll just quickly pull up some slides. We have some overlap between kind of what each of us was going to share, and so that'll make sure I am quick as well, and we can return to this kind of broader community dialogue, because that's, I think, really what's been wonderful about these sessions that RSDP has been hosting. I know last Tuesday was amazing, this past Tuesday was a really great one. So just as a reminder, my name is Helen Schnoes. I work on the marketing team at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture in a new position in the last few months that's focused on kind of how we better support these issues and kind of systems questions we've been looking at making the local food connection at the wholesale level, be it institutions, retailers, restaurants. And so just as a kind of high level reminder for folks who hadn't been aware, we have a landing page now on the State Department of Agriculture website with all things COVID-19, and it's being updated regularly. And so if you have questions, you're looking for guidance, this could be one of your first stops to go to. And in particular, we've created a COVID specific email address where if you don't know which division or who to send it to, if you send it there, it's being tracked daily. So just want folks to be aware of those resources. Looking a bit further at what's on that website, we have things for food makers and food establishments. Garden centers and nurseries were just added to the updated executive order, so they're going to be reopening as an essential service. Obviously, in our farming and ranching community, this is impacting both the business side of their lives as well as the home and kind of job site, and so we have a number of resources there. The survey that we've been talking about that was a collaboration is included on this website under marketing opportunities. And so as Karly said, it's still open. They're still supporting that matchmaking as it can work with the specifics of each case. And so that's where you can find it if you want to send it out. It's still being distributed by various farming and stakeholder groups around the state. And I just wanted to highlight that this has been a really big topic of conversation recently as we've gone over, and the impacts, especially in restaurant and food service, have been extreme kind of across scales of agriculture, but specifically, I think, unique in the local and regional food system realm. And just this morning, NPR was able to do a story about some of those impacts and some of the creative ways farmers have been responding, but those remaining uncertainties as well in this wholesale area. So Karly and Jamie already gave you a big overview of the survey, so I don't really need to stay there, but I just wanted to emphasize that in this like unprecedented time, this survey was really a first step in figuring out an immediate response that came through really a convening from the Farmers Union and a number of other ag groups in the state to really look at, I was going to deliver to a restaurant next week and now I can't. So what can we do? And so while there's clearly the systems level issues that have been coming up in the dialogue and that I'm excited to kind of commit my whole profession towards working on, this survey was really looking in this immediate area of we're in crisis and what can we do to try to help mitigate the impacts. A little more data on just kind of high level of who's been completing it. We are still getting responses. So from when I think Karly made her slides to when I finalized mine, we got another one. And I don't think this in any way is representative of everyone who's impacted right now by any means. We're seeing producers who, had 80+% of their business in restaurant sales or other food service engagements. Almost half of those who have been completing it have been in the produce realm, and meat and poultry have been about a quarter of that. But it really has run the gamut. We even had a kind of hemp processor as well as like cider. So it's really, I think, no sector is untouched in our food system from this. And it's been a mix of fresh and frozen and shelf stable. What I really wanted to underline and where I'm interested in some dialogue is one of the questions that we asked is are you looking for a one-time purchase, or do you have ongoing needs? And more than half of respondents were saying that they had product and they will have product that represents more than a one-time purchase, which I think to me suggests that while this survey was set up for kind of that immediate space, maybe we need to start thinking about what other supports and what other collaborations are possible. And in some of the responses that were shared, we also had farmers saying, yeah, I kind of maybe had some of these salad greens right now, but my restaurant business really ramps up in the summer and fall, and I don't know what to think about that right now. So just interesting that there's the now, but obviously it's planting season, and our major local food harvest is coming in the months ahead. I did want to mention that in addition to the wholesale response, that we've seen rising interest in direct to consumer. And so our Minnesota Grown program has been really activated with that interest and is a resource regardless of the wholesale side and differentiating those market channels. But we do have a wholesale directory with Minnesota Grown, and we're actually in the process of doing some updates to it, in part for a farm to school local procurement reimbursement grant that will be coming later this year. But that is a resource we want to kind of figure out how we can best strengthen. And I think the crises and the challenges we're in right now can help us figure out how as MDA to improve that wholesale directory, so we can better support these supply chain connections in our state. And then there's just some other general guidance that is helpful, and wanted to highlight that it's there for direct to consumer initiatives. But really, and I think we've already gone there with the dialogue following Jamie and Carly's presentation, but I'm really interested in hearing from others on the call what your experiences have been in the wholesale market right now. And as I at least have the perception that we're kind of moving out of our immediate response mode to a new normal, and we don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know what it'll evolve into. Like, what should support, what should connections be looking like? And so I'm really grateful for this platform to have some of this shared conversation and just continue building on the dialogue that we've already been having. So to give space for that, I will just say these are my citations. There's tons of news stories. You'll probably already have been reading them. And just thank you. And I have a good number of MDA colleagues on this call. And so if you have a question, if I can't answer it, we have a lot of other great MDA folks here that are ready to jump into the dialogue. I know we had a question about retail resources in Minnesota Grown, and I know Karen Lanthier is here and could speak to that a bit. So just thank you, and looking forward to continuing the conversation now.
Unmuting myself here. I think one of the pieces that I saw going through the chat earlier was how we might expedite or more efficiently develop some of these meetings with the grocers, and how we can maybe speed up that process or open that door a little bit faster for producers to get in that door and develop those relationships. So any additional recommendations from the three of you or anyone else on the chat who might want to explore what that would look like? I think that would be a good starting point, and then I will look for other questions that come through as we dialogue.
Honey, this is Jamie. Is it possible to ask what the biggest barrier in folks that have either had the meetings or tried to get the meeting? I think a little more context would be helpful for us to try to answer that.
Yeah, anyone on the chat who wants to kind of talk about some of the barriers or concerns they had in trying to facilitate some of those sessions? And I think you can unmute yourself, but maybe not. You can test that. Maybe that's just me as a host. any growers or anyone who's tried to, set up some of those meetings and haven't had any luck or have gotten in the door, but things didn't progress? If there's any anecdotes you want to provide on that experience?
Connie, I can make a comment.
There we are, Steve. Yes, thanks.
I think one of the roles that MGA can play here is to help everyone understand why buying local is important. I think buy local is an easy catchphrase, but what it really means is a set of public health markers that represent creating robust local communities and local food economies. And price is not everything. And so much of retail is driven by specific price points and by the perceived need to compete just on that basis, when really I think everyone, when they step away from the produce rack and the retail shelf, agrees, yes, we should be improving public health. Local communities are important, but when we only buy produce from the West Coast, we're stepping away from the potential positive benefit of buying carrots from Northfield. To have one simple example, I think adjusting the expectations and helping tell the story of why this is actually an important role that grocery stores can play is a dialogue that we can all have and that MGA can have a part in.
Yeah, I mean, from where we sit, that totally makes sense, and I think I'm hopeful, Steve, that as we move through this process, that we have some of these stories that we can help tell. I think the hows and the whys are really important, but then having some case in points. But I think we can do a better job of trying to articulate that why it, besides we all, to your point, everyone says it's the right thing to do, but building a deeper case for that in a conversation, I think, is important.
Yeah, and I'll say I'm excited. Just it seems like there's an alignment of resources and conversation right now. So the farm to grocery toolkit that just came out from the Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships, I think, is a really wonderful resource that can, once you have the printed document, then it's how do you activate it and how do you use it in community and build on it. So I'm really excited that we have that right now. And then I also think that with the Retailer of the Year collaboration we've had, that's been really wonderful, and it's grown each year in how many stores are participating and such. But it was always another thing on the plate of our Minnesota grown staff, who work so hard and are spread so thin. And so that we've at MDA have been able to add more staff in my position. I think I'm excited to continue collaborating with Carly and Jamie and engaging with community on how we further use that existing platform to make progress together in strengthening our regional food system connections.
Any partnerships of that we can envision with co-packers or packing companies in Minnesota? Any thoughts around those entities? And if anyone from that industry is on the chat here, I'd love to hear from you.
Is Brian still on?
Yeah, Brian would be a good resource for that.
Brian. Oh, Ariel, I think Brian got off. Ariel Kagan, do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. This is Ariel Kagan from Department of Ag also, and I work in the sort of consumer packaged goods world that we're talking about. Yeah, I mean, we've seen a number of companies looking for, trying to make sure that their supply chains are safe and that they're going to keep on getting product. We work with a number of companies that already source from Minnesota farms, and we try to encourage that as much as possible, but there's definitely room there for more partnership and collaboration.
Any other questions from anyone? Questions about resources, additional input, your own personal experiences that you've been seeing? Bonnie's got a question here that, or a statement. There could be a role for farmers markets as licensed food hubs. Yes, there's the aggregator program that Kathy Zeman and Sarah George have worked on. We can probably provide some links on that. She says a lot of their focus so far has been on institutions and restaurants, and that they've pivoted hard to individual consumers. She said, Bonnie says she'd love to speak with any grocers in the Twin Cities areas that are looking to buy local. So there might be an opportunity again here for Bonnie to connect with MGA and some of those resources. And then Swan has put a link in the chat to the Farm to Rural Grocery Toolkit that Helen mentioned. And this is a resource that both farmers and grocers, it's built for both of you to really understand, and provide some guidance for moving produce into that grocery market and how to establish relationships and some of the requirements and licensing around that. So please do take a look at that resource. It's very new and it's been in development for a while, and we're very proud of it. Any additional questions from people? Oh, and Anna reminded me that toolkit is part of our next session. So if you stay tuned, this will be, you can have kind of a part 2 to this conversation at our next session, which is next Tuesday, I believe. And Helen also provided in the chat some background on that farmers market aggregation that I hinted at in response to Bonnie's message, is that there's been work around aggregation for farmers markets, testing out that system, and they've documented a lot of that work, and that link will provide you some more detail on that. And then with any of these resources, feel free, if you have more questions around them, to circle back to RSDP, and we can get you connected with experts and people to continue to get you the resources and answers that you need for your questions. And Bonnie's got a good link here, farmersmarkethub.org. So I'll give a few more moments for any other inspiration ideas that have that bubble up. Brian's got a question here. Can MDA reps recommend on the value of food makers using merchandising companies? I think you meant MGA, right, Brian? Can MGA reps recommend the value of food makers using merchandising companies and point of sale companies like Indignia? There we go.
Maybe comment on the value.
Yeah, there we go. Comment on the value. I'll read that again because that was a very poor interpretation of reading. Can MGA reps comment on the value of food makers using merchandising companies and point of sale companies like Indignia. Jamie or Carly, do you have any insight on that?
You know, one of the things that I would say, I think that there's always somewhat of a value, but the challenge is so many, depending on what market you're wanting to try to get into. Many of the grocers are pretty particular about how their POS is, so they may want to do it their own way. So I think it depends. Honestly, it's a little bit of a case by case. So if you're looking to be more of a specialty market or more mass, or if you're trying to go into an independent rural, I think they would love any help that you can get. So I think it, and honestly, is a little bit more of where the market you're hoping to move into. Hopefully that's helpful. Makes sense?
Yeah, and it's Insignia. You probably knew that.
Clear, yeah.
Good.
Connie, I wanted to follow up on a question that was asked earlier that we didn't get to, and I think Karen has gotten off the call, but Jamie and Carly, correct me if I'm wrong. Minnesota Grown provides free marketing materials to retailers to display with Minnesota Grown products. So shelf clickers, banners, we provide that as through MDA to support these connections. Is that right, Carly and Jamie? I'm still new and learning.
Yeah. That's 100% correct. That both I think there's and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's maybe a small fee for the farm. I don't know for the Minnesota Grown company, but I know they can get the stickers, so they can come with the stickers or the POS, but I know all the POS is free for any grocer that wants that. Absolutely.
Yeah, we have a cost share for farm members, but for retailers, when they use Minnesota Grown, we provide that to support that marketing connection. Yep.
And I know we push that out a lot too, because it is, but obviously there's the criteria that has to go with being that Minnesota. I mean, you have to meet the criteria, so we don't want that just out being stuck on things either. So we're very, they have to make sure they go through their process to put it on the right things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well said. Good, thanks for catching that, Helen.
Mm-hmm. There's the program website, just so everyone has it easily accessible.
Great. Yeah, it's a bibliography of information in this chat. That's great.
Very robust.
All right, any other input from people?
I think, and this is Jamie with the Grocers. I think one thing I hope, Helen, and I think we can all kind of continue to work on, but as we go through this, I think coming up and using some of the toolkits that are out there, but also kind of having that how and why for local, and then maybe some even best practices with a kind of a farm and a grocer or a producer or whatever, that kind of here's 3 steps you can take, here's 3 steps we can take, and if it could be a shared document, and for all size, I think some of the rules are a little bit smaller, and maybe they don't work as well as maybe for some of the larger or grocers that maybe have a couple stores. So I think making some kind of document, as we continue these dialogues, coming up with something like that along those lines. I hope we can do that, because that I think also will be helpful, and it's something we can kind of take with us and all the opportunities we have to speak.
Yeah. Do you have a recommended next steps for how we can make that happen? Are there people you want to bring together, or ways for people on this chat to participate and make that happen?
I would think, Helen, we can work together, and whoever would be appropriate from Ag, but then, Connie, I think we would, a little core working group, even if it's just through email chain, and kind of here's some things to draft up. But I really like everybody feels good about saying they're buying local and want to do that, but I think the health impact and the impact to the community and drawing that out, and I do think there's an opportunity now in the next, I'm going to say 45 days, to really take this crisis and use this to spring some of these conversations and to get people thinking different.
Good.
Yeah, I just shared my email in the chat. If folks who are interested want to reach out to me, I can facilitate that connection and follow up on kind of where we go.
Excellent.
Great, thank you, Helen.
Great, and thank you, Jamie and Carly, for your willingness to put some of those solutions forward and develop some working groups on putting things together. So that nimble, resilient thinking is on display here, and that's great. Good. All right, we're at 4:15. Any additional questions from our chat group? Allowing a little bit of breathing time. I know it always takes me a little bit to think of a question or whatever. With Helen's email out there, feel free to connect with her. I will put mine in there as well. Oops, I sent it just to Swan. Nope, we'll make it go to everybody. And please use that in appropriate ways, but with questions or input that you have, any inspirations past this that come to you, RSDP and MDA and a number of people in the chat here are keen on fast tracking and creating some possibly hopeful and inspirational solutions in this time of disruption. So don't hide your ideas under bushel baskets. Bring them forward so that we can all benefit from them. And then I guess with that,
this is
yeah, go ahead.
I put my email in there as well as our website. So again, as a resource, feel free to shoot me an email or check out our website. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. So take that information down, and then I am going to walk you all through the next and last sessions here. So there's more to come. So we had the Farm to Rural Grocery Toolkit. We have on the 21st, we have employment concerns on small farms. Rachel from Farm Commons, I believe, is facilitating that. We have Helen coming back with Farm to School to talk about that market. And then we are going to address some of the discrimination and some racial issues that we've been hearing about during this time. So please join us for these future sessions. You can learn more about this. You can share this information with people you think need to know about it. We have Facebook. You can send out tweets if you're on Twitter. And then please join us Thursday for Minnesota Farmers Market options. Although, I think that's old content, right, Anna?
Today's Thursday.
Today's Thursday, yes. Yes, so thank you very much for your participation today, for your wise and thoughtful information. And you can look for, go back to these resources on the Local Foods College website listed here on this slide. And with that, thank you for your time and keep in touch, everyone.